Buenos noches and hola, everyone. It's the two-man game. I'm Bob Ramsey alongside my partner, Matt Rocchio, and I butchered through a couple of Espanol words there because, and we'll get to it in a few minutes, I'm in Mexico with the Billikens as they're in the Cancun Challenge, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that is why I tried to butcher it, or didn't try to butcher it, but it comes natural. Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rammer. How are you doing today?
Yeah, we're doing good. It was a beautiful day at Riviera Maya, just south of Cancun for the Cancun Challenge. We're at the Hard Rock Hotel and Resort, and that's where the games will be played in the ballroom, quite frankly, is what it is, a big ballroom. And it's a very interesting atmosphere, very strange. And like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But the Billikens won their game on Saturday night against Mercer to get back on the winning track. Now they're 4-1 on the season and would like to pick up a couple of more W's here in Mexico.
Yeah, it was a really interesting game. Obviously, the slow start that I think had a lot of people worried right off the bat, a little shell-shocked against a Mercer squad. But then obviously, as soon as they settled in, they were able to just whittle away at that deficit, and they were just able to keep expanding the lead as the game went. Just kind of, it showed you that overall, I think SLU was the better team despite some sloppy play throughout the game.
Yeah, I think, there's no doubt they were the better team. And it's funny, my broadcast partner on KMOX, Earl Austin Jr., he and I flew commercial on Sunday, we were on the flight with the Mercer team and talked to a couple of the coaches a little bit, and they really had nothing but compliments for the Billikens and thought that they executed their game plan very well, and they didn't have very many answers for St. Louis U.
Some of the big takeaways from the Mercer game I wanted to get into, obviously, I think the first one has to be the play of Fred Thatch in that game. Obviously, there was that stretch in the first half. I wrote it down here. I believe he had 11 straight points at one point for the Billikens and really took them from a point where they were down, I think it was they were still down 5 or 6, and then he ended it and they were up 6 the other way. And so just an incredible run by Fred Thatch. And then throughout the entire game, I thought it was impressive how he played. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Rammer, this blew my mind. It looked to me, and maybe I missed a sub, it looked to me that Fred Thatch not only played 11 straight minutes at one point in the first half from about the 17-minute mark to the 7-minute mark. I believe he played almost the entirety of the last 16 minutes of the second half as well. And I think he might have only sat down one time, if at all. That was an unbelievable run and game by Fred Thatch, I thought.
Let me check those numbers real quick and see if I can concur on that, because he did play 28 minutes and 46 seconds. So it looks like you're right on there. The Billikens were struggling and had kind of gotten out of the rhythm they had worked on for a couple of days, trying to get back into it. And Travis had told us in the pregame show, brought it up again in the postgame show on radio, that that Mercer runs an offense that they won't see the rest of the year. And you can go seasons without seeing that. And he said those first, 6 or 8 minutes, it was like his players forgot what the defensive game plan was. It's just it escaped him, and he called a couple of timeouts early. Finally, put Fred in, and Fred got it going. But where we saw it was Fred hitting the offensive boards and getting putbacks, and it was an amazing performance in that regard. And I mentioned that at Memphis, Fred couldn't get anything going his way and was clearly frustrated in the game. And I'd never really seen that from him. In the postgame show, Travis Ford told us that he had a meeting Thursday with Fred and basically to kind of get him back to who he is. You got to be true to yourself. If you're a guard and you want to be a high flyer, or you're big and you want to shoot threes, whatever it is, be true to yourself. And obviously the message was heard, And the execution from Fred was, superb on Saturday night. And if you can start to get, now we're not asking Fred to score 20 points a game, but if you can start getting the kind of defense and rebounding from guard play that Fred Thatch brings you, that's a huge bonus.
Yeah, as you mentioned, in that 11-point straight stretch that he had for the Bills, he also had 3 rebounds and 2 steals. I mean, and one thing I forgot to track that I'm sure Travis Ford was, I'm sure he had like 4 or 5 other tip balls.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly – go ahead.
I was going to say, but he hadn't been playing well for a couple of games, and it sort of came to a head or a bottom in Memphis. And hopefully the ship is righted as they move forward now, because having a veteran like Fred Thatch, who really understands the way the offense is supposed to work and is gifted defensively, and with his strength and athletic ability, having him playing the way he can play is just an unbelievable asset to have.
And speaking of some of the long minutes that he played, I thought it was interesting that we really saw the first deviation from what we saw in the first couple of games in the rotation. Obviously, against Memphis, we saw minutes from some of the lower guys in the rotation for different reasons. This game, 8-man rotation, except for Markai Strickland getting there for a minute at the end of the first half. An 8-man rotation, and I think more so than just the short rotation, I think stood out was what I was just talking about with Fred, was that the long shifts, I guess is the word I want to use here, for some of these lineups that he had, where we were seeing 4 or 5 dead balls and 5 or 6 minutes of game time, sometimes 8 minutes of game time, where Travis was just keeping the same group out there. I thought that was interesting and a very hard shift from the first 4 games.
And I think there are several reasons. One is the way the game played out, but 2 is you stepped up in competition a little bit. It's not many programs that want to play 10, 11, 12 guys. It's coaches preach this a lot. Coaches are control freaks. And when you keep changing the dynamic on the floor, it's very difficult to keep the kind of rhythm you need, the kind of cohesiveness. Mm-hmm. It can be done. Again, there are some teams that are exceptions to that rule. And I think I wouldn't be a bit surprised if most of the season, 9 or 10 guys do play. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But Travis came into the season saying, remember we talked about it.
Yep.
That he thought he'd have an 8-man rotation, and that once Javonte Perkins went down, they had to kind of reconfigure it. And I think that'll probably evolve as each game goes by and the season goes on.
Yeah, not to get too nitpicky with the lineups. The only thing that shocked me about that is I thought that with the struggles they had at times getting their half-court offense going and shooting the ball, I thought it was a little bit surprising that we didn't get Rashad Williams at all during the game.
I thought so too while the game was going on. I thought so too. My observation looking at his numbers and things from the past and just watching him in practice in a few games this year, he's a guy that needs to shoot in volume. He needs a lot of shots. And if he doesn't come in and make a couple right away, it seems like Travis is willing to kind of get him out of there. Again, it's an observation. And out of my head, I haven't talked to Travis about it specifically. But to your point, I thought we might have gotten a look at Rashad, but that's not the one that really stuck in my mind. I really thought that when both Francis Okoro and Martin Lynch got in foul trouble, we'd see Traore. Seeing a Traore, and we didn't. I did talk to Travis today, not about the lineup specifically, but about Traore, and he had a marvelous practice today here in Riviera Maya. Terrific practice. He's all over the floor. His shot is really coming along, and he's going to play. He's going to play minutes. He will.
Yeah, I'm a big Traore fan, and interesting just looking at the center breakdown. Linson played 19 minutes, Okoro played 21, and it was interesting in that he stuck with Okoro really late. I mean, for really the entirety of the second part of the second half, despite the fact that I think Linson only ended up with 2 personal fouls for the game. I thought that was an interesting move by Ford Any takeaways you have from such a heavy use of
Well,
Okoro late in the game?
yeah, Martin didn't have a great game. It was better than Memphis, and it was great to see him
Yeah.
back. But I think he liked Franco's athleticism and ability to play above
Mhm.
the rim. And keep in mind when they had Hasse in there. For those that don't recall, he's the 6'9" big guy, but plays like a guard. He's out on the
Mhm.
perimeter 90% of his minutes on the floor. He goes out to the perimeter, and I think Travis felt that Okoro. Uh, Perhaps could defend out on the perimeter and get back and have a little more mobility maybe than Linson in that kind of a situation.
I don't know if you were able to ask Travis about this after the game, but after Jordan Nesbit came out of the game about 3 minutes into the second half, we never saw him again. He obviously
Right.
finished with just 15 minutes and the 1 point on the free throw. What I really saw in that those 3 minutes in the second half before he got pulled, and I'm not sure if it was for an injury. This is just what I saw was he's not moving his feet on defense. He's flat-footed too often,
Yeah.
and I think it was in that stretch he had a really bad turnover, just being lazy with the ball on offense. I think that was definitely a move by Travis to kind of show him, you gotta keep your game tight if you're going to be playing 25, 30 minutes with this team.
Yeah. And I think the bar is set very high for him. Um, but to get the production you need, you have to set it high. You have to demand a high level. Like there was a thing today, and he was offered his remorse and got after it and played better. But Travis went at length in practice, showing how he wanted the players not to get hit on screens, especially the high screens, kind of from wing to wing over the arc. And
Okay.
he was adamant how he wanted it done. Not just that he wanted it done, but showed how he wanted it done and insisted on why it had to be done. I mean, it was a real point of emphasis, Matt. And so they got back to playing again. In the very first play, a guy picked Janez off. Boom, picked him off, and he didn't get through. And he realized as soon as he did it, and it was right in front of me, and I was watching him. He was focused on the typical man-to-man principles, but with that added piece, it just escaped him for that moment, and that's the kind of focus that Travis demands from everybody.
Yeah,
If you
they were
don't,
getting caught on so many screens against Mercer. I mean,
yeah,
and like you said, I wonder if you mentioned earlier, Travis, talking about how they're not going to see an offense like Mercer the rest of the season, and I wonder how much, like you said, that contributed to the fact that not only in the first half, but it happened a lot more in the first half. There were a lot of possessions where the rotation, especially on switches on screens, just looked like it was completely lost. And I think that's part of what Travis is saying about Mercer's offense, but also there was some fairly simple, screen the screener kind of movement that completely had SLU leaving two guys wide open on the wing multiple possessions. That's a problem.
it was a problem. It's not currently a problem. It was a problem for the Mercer game, and Travis talked about that, and he said that once they kind of realized what they were supposed to be doing and figured it out, it wasn't the issue that presented itself in that first. I don't know. You probably made notes. It was about 8 minutes or so, maybe a little longer in before the Billikens sort of figured things out and righted the ship. Now, and it may not be a coincidence. It could also be about the time Hasse got a second foul. I think they'd started to turn it around a little bit, but when he came out of the game with two fouls, they grabbed it by the neck, put it in a stranglehold. So probably two separate things, but both coinciding to kind of get things going the way they wanted them to in that basketball game. I think what happened is the Mercer wants you to play defensively different from the way you've been taught since you were a kid. With the bigs helping protect the rim, even if it means leaving their man, because usually a big is guarding another big. So he's going to be around. But this guy was staying out in the perimeter. And so if Martin or Franco left him, found him, bang, hits the three. And so and then those double screens and the way you play through those, they try to do things differently than they know everybody is taught. And it took a couple of timeouts for some attitude and focus adjustment.
Moving a little bit past the Mercer game, this is just kind of a commentary that I've been watching the entire season because I believe you were with me in studio when we had Corey Tate and he talked about how excited they were to use TJ Hargrove at the point of a 1-3-1 zone. And I wonder what you've seen. I think we saw in the second half, we saw more of a 2-3 kind of matchup zone a little bit from SLU against Mercer. So I just kind of wonder, going kind of through 5 games so far, what are your thoughts on SLU's use of zone so far? And are you surprised that we haven't really seen that TJ up top 1-3-1 that we heard them talk about in the preseason?
Well, only because I like to see it. Travis doesn't like to go to zone. He has what he's been going to put on some, I won't call it token pressure, but not like smothering pressure. He'll go to a full court or 3/4 court 2-2-1. When they go to a 1-3-1, they're usually looking to get traps as soon as the ball comes across the half court line. They ran it once against Mercer, and then when the ball got below the free throw line, I think it went to the left corner, one of the corners, got below the free throw line, they adjusted to man-to-man. So they're trying to cause something early with it and then adjusted to man-to-man. I think depending on the game situation, we will see it. I like it when they play that. It's pretty good. Now, with this particular group of personnel, I haven't seen it be dramatically impressive or give us defensive production. But so we'll see. We may see him run it a few times, and then you and I may go here on two-man game and go, let's scrap that. Let's get away from it. But in the past, I've always liked Travis's 1-3-1. So we'll see what happens.
I liked it that they had a couple possessions solidly in a row where they finally got the rotations figured out, where they were dropping the man to the middle and they were rotating correctly and the man was helping out on the right guy. They had about 2 or 3 possessions late in the game where they really had the rotations and the help and the recovery actually kind of on a string, if you will. It took them a while, and again, it didn't happen until late, but I saw it, and I think that was probably a good thing for Travis to see as well.
Yeah, and then the defense leads to offense. We say it all the time on the game broadcast, like we're not surprised, but hey, here's something. But that's always been, and really for the vast majority of good basketball coaches and good teams, it does. You lock up defense, you get turnovers, you get defensive rebounds, it gets your offense off and going, it changes momentum. So it shouldn't be a surprise, but once the defense got corrected, the offense picked up as well.
I keep saying I have one more thing, but I promise this is the last one before I let us move on, because this is a really nitpicky thing, but I'm gonna bring it up. The amount of times that SLU would set up screens for Gibson Jimmerson, and he would UCLA cut off them. So instead he would curl hard around the screen as he's catching it and cut hard to the basket. They kept doing that. Like, there were 6 or 7 actions throughout the game in a row where the screen action for Gibson was for kind of a UCLA screen or cut like that. And yet and then as soon as they started hedging it, we saw Gibson pop out high for the shot. I just thought it was weird how prevalent the driving cut was being used as opposed to him coming out high off the screen to get a shot. And it was weird to me because this is the 3rd game in a row where really there's a lot of hard curls towards the rim and less of them coming high off the shot for a 3-point shot. And I thought that was a weird usage of Gibson because he's got some issues finishing at the rim right now. And I know Travis wants him to work on that, but he's got some issues finishing right now. And I thought that was an odd usage of him.
You've gone back and looked at the film. I'm going off just personal memory recollection, which is not a good way to go. But I wouldn't go so far as to say Gibson's having problems at the rim. I think he's scoring on all three zones. And if we go back and look at what he did in the game, he still had 15 points.
Yep.
Even though he only had 1 3, yet he still had 15 points. I think that if you step back, because every opponent watches every piece of tape, right? Just like you do. And if you see that this guy is just going to shoot threes, then it changes the way you guard him. But if you see, if you overplay him and that he is more than willing, in fact, looking to go to the mid range or go to the rim, I think it changes the way defenses have to play. And so I think this is almost like a pitcher, actually more like a hitter setting a pitcher up, missing that curveball in that first at bat on strikeouts, knowing the guy, oh, I got him on that curveball, I'm going to come back with it, and the hitter setting him up to launch one. And I think there's a little bit of that going on to show that he can score at all 3 levels.
And I guess that brings me to my larger question, which is how much do you think going on with those kind of movements, like you said, I guess I'm surprised that there'd be that the thought process would be game by game instead of within the game. As in, after you show him cutting hard 3 times, then you have him pop out, whereas opposed to maybe have an entire game where the majority of the time you're showing him crashing hard so that tomorrow or on Tuesday after your game on Saturday, the team then starts hedging immediately from the minute go. And I guess, so how much do you think in-game kind of setting up is there as opposed to game by game throughout an entire season?
Well, coaches have a game plan. Travis has a game plan, but it doesn't mean the opposition is going to play along, right? Yeah. So I think a player on the court has to do that. But as far as Mercer specifically and Gibson making those cuts, I will quote the great philosopher and my partner, Earl Austin Jr., who says, milk it till it moves.
Yeah. And again, as soon as they hedged it hard, one play, and Gibson caught the ball right and ran into a Mercer guy who was just completely waiting on the other side of the screen. As soon as they hedged it that hard, the next 2 times he came out high for a jumper, and I think he only hit one of them. But nonetheless, as soon as they hedged it super hard, we did see the different movement. I just thought it was interesting the way that they were using Gibson right now. I have it compared to right now in my head, Klay Thompson's dad, Michael Thompson, when asked about a younger Klay Thompson, said that his biggest problem is that he doesn't take layups, he takes clay-ups, which are his own interpretation of weird thing. And he has the same thing Gibson has, which is whenever he wants to go up instead of going strong, he'll do that thing where he twists his body to the back of the defender and just kind of try to put it up instead of just going up hard and using the fact that, you're 6'5" and you got some meat on you to create some contact and get those foul calls that Travis was talking about earlier in the season. And so as the long play, I like it as getting Gibson more opportunities at the rim. I would just like him to show. I can't wait to see what kind of development we see from him as a finisher, because obviously his shooting, we know it's there. And his cutting game is incredible. He's always on the baseline making great time cuts within the flow of the offense. But I'm just wondering about his actual finishing game, and I can't wait to see it as the season progresses.
Well, like I said, I threw those stats at you, and I think development is the key word of your what you were saying there. Development. Still a young guy and a year ahead of being the go-to guy. He was going to be, the second and third option this year, and suddenly thrust into the first option of the offense. That's a lot.
Let's go ahead and look forward a little bit to Tuesday's matchup against Illinois State. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch. This is going to be a high-scoring game if I had to bet. Illinois State can absolutely score the ball. Antonio Reeves is averaging 23 points per game right now. Cy Chapman is averaging 19 and 10. Mark Freeman averaging 17, 5 and 4. They rebound like crazy. All up and down the lineup. Tag boards from their 5'10" point guard, 4 boards from another one of their forwards. All the guys on the bench, they play really only about 7 or 8 deep. Those guys all get 4 or 5 boards a game. They rebound like crazy, and they can score. I think this is going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. Couple of things to look at, and one you didn't mention to tip of the cap to the Redbirds is they make their free throws. As a team,
Yeah.
I want to get it right, 77% from the line as a team. So you
That's
can't
good.
you better
Yeah,
not
like
make
that.
too many mistakes and get in foul trouble. The one thing, though, is if you're looking for an Achilles heel, they really turn the ball over a
Mhm.
lot. So certainly relative to assists. The raw number might not be as alarming, but their assist turnover ratio is completely backwards. Now, sometimes I look at that as a old school stat going back 20 years, 25 years. I'd pick wins and losses on if the team had a better assist turnover ratio than the Billikens. The game has changed enough, I think, with more teams being able to score and make up for mistakes with the three, that it's
Mhm.
not it's not the critical factor that I think it used to be, but I still go to it. I still look at it. And yeah, and so you mentioned the rebounding, and um, I think that's where we have to obviously stay with that. Everybody rebounds. It's not just the one big guy who's in at a given time. Everybody's got to go to the boards. Everybody's got to crash the boards on both ends. Actually, they don't do that on the offensive end. You do have to get a couple of guys back, but you know what I mean. You can't
Mhm.
just leave it to the big to get all the rebounds. It's got to be a team experience.
Yeah, I'm interested to see the lineup or the matchup, I should say, between Chapman and the center group, whether Traore gets in there or not. Linson, Okoro against Chapman, that's going to be big. You talk about their
Yeah,
free throws. Not only do they make a lot of them, they draw a lot of them, and they have in
yeah,
pretty much each game, one of their guys has had a big game at the line. Chapman's one of those guys who's had, I think, 2 big games so far at the line. One of them, he had 11 or 14 attempts at the line and hit most of them. So, I mean, he knows how to draw fouls if big guys are going up too early. So that'll be an interesting matchup. I like. The big one I kind of been interested by is Kendall Lewis. Their nominal 4 is 6'7", and he's listed at 195 pounds. I'm interested to see how TJ Hargrove continues his strong streak of games right now against a guy who, while having a couple inches on him, I'm guessing probably isn't that much of a better athlete, because few people are, than TJ, and somebody that TJ can body for rebounds. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup as well.
I agree with you, and that's why you need both Hargrove and Nesbit both contributing in a game. Not one
Mm-hmm.
guy one game, another guy the other game. When you've got wings that are that athletic and dynamic, and they're both on their game at the same time, it creates nightmares for the opposition.
The big name I already talked about, Antonio Reeves, 23 points a game. He's a
Yeah,
big scorer. He's a volume scorer. Doesn't necessarily move the ball that much or crash the boards that much, but when you're scoring like he does, you don't really have to. So that a big question, I think, for SLU is going to be who matches up against him. I think after the last game we saw from him, I think Fred Thatch is going to be used early and often off the bench. I think Jordan Nesbit, if I had to guess with how Travis Ford just is as a coach, I wouldn't be surprised if right off the bat Travis says, you want to earn your minutes today. This is your job. Stop him from scoring. Stop him from beating us
yeah.
out there with shut him down one-on-one if you have to. I'll be interested to see that matchup as well. I think Reeves could have a big game, especially with some of the issues we've seen at times from the Billikens getting around screens and how they've gotten caught on switches sometimes. But right off the bat, I think the matchup of who Travis Ford says, go get him, will be a big tell.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying about practice today. The emphasis on not just telling guys get over screens, but working on technique on how to do it. And those in the Illinois State screens on the high wing, defending that is going to be critical. I think you're 100% right.
Yeah, again, I said they're they're a good rebounding team, but I think that is actually an aspect that SLU can win the game at. And if you can take away the rebounding, and again, if you can take advantage of turnovers and get out and run, right there, those two things. I know rebounding doesn't matter as much to the game in predicting wins and looking at a box score and seeing what makes sense as it used to. But still, if you can beat this team on the boards and force the turnovers that they've allowed teams to, or let them make the mistakes that other teams have allowed them to make, just off those two things, I think SLU's in a good place. And then at that point, if Nesbit's able to come back and score like we think he is, Hargrove's able to continue what he's able to do, and like you said, Gibson's able to continue developing at all three levels, I think we're looking at a high-scoring game, but I think one that SLU has a very good chance at winning.
Yeah, they better. You'd like to think that I'd like to think because Illinois State doesn't guard very well, that the Billikens, if they make a normal, a representative amount of shots, you know, in the upper 40s or so, field goal percentage, upper 30s, 3-point shooting, make their free throws. I'm not saying they have to go crazy on any of those categories. Just a good representative percentage in those categories, I think they should win handily. But if you have a night where you can't make a three, yeah, you might have problems.
On that point, I haven't got a chance to look at what the final numbers were, but has SLU's ability to get shots within the half-court offense at the rim been problematic to you so far in the grand scheme of things? Because I think they've shot the ball really well. They've done a really good job, I think, the few times they've attacked the mid-range, and then in transition they've been great at the rim. But in half-court, I don't see them getting the points in the paint that you'd want. But that has been offset by a team that's drawing more fouls than I think you expected them to.
Well, I haven't looked at the points in the paint number. I do know, though, that their half-court efficiency is tops in the Atlantic 10 so far, by far. Nobody's even close. So I don't know. Just that's the number.
A-10's having a little bit of a rough start.
What's that now?
A-10's having a little bit of a rough start.
Well, they're a little over 500, and you'd like to be way over 500.
Yeah.
I think the league, and I don't really have any of the numbers in front of me. I was looking at it earlier. Has really played a challenging non-conference schedule the first 2+ weeks of the season. In my view, I think very challenging, and I think they've done fine. Yeah, there are a couple of those games you'd like to have back. Yeah, probably so, but I think it's been okay. But having said that, I was just trying to give that offensive efficiency number some relativity, so it's not just a raw number for people. Because while as a league, you've got some teams with multiple losses, you also have 3 or 4 or 5 teams that only have one loss. So I think that number does kind of hold up.
Yeah, and I'm being biased to the Mercer game just because they did struggle so many at multiple different points to really get a half-court offense going, and really I might almost be overreacting to the first half when at different points it just completely stalled out, and it took multiple sets and just nothing was ever available. To that point, I will pull one positive from this statement, which is SLU does an incredible job of resetting the offense and getting into different looks when stuff doesn't work. I think that's a really impressive job, and I think that speaks to not only guys like DeAndre Jones and Yuri Collins, obviously, but guys like Fred Thatch and TJ Hargrove. I think their grasp of the offense is very obvious when you see how often they're able to reset the offense and get another play going after earlier ones in the shot clock fail.
Yeah. I think that the 5 games in, the half-court offense has been good. I would hazard a guess that Travis Ford thinks it should be way better, like you do.
Yeah.
And to that end, they'll be working pretty hard. If there is a rash of turnovers from Illinois State, we run out a lot. I wonder how much we'll really see of grinding through. I agree with you. This doesn't seem like one of those games where both teams are going deep into their shot clocks and grinding through the offense. But
I don't think so.
But we'll see. Game to game, you never know. You're in a foreign country with no fans, playing in a ballroom. It's a different experience. So, all the obvious factors may not even come into play. You never know.
Well, there it is. SLU and Illinois State Tuesday night. Obviously, Wednesday night, still kind of up in the air. The opponent and everything will be decided, obviously, on what happens
two
on a
good,
Tuesday evening.
but two good teams, either Stephen F. Austin or Buffalo. So
Yep.
those are both. This is a nice mid-major tournament. Probably, you know, the Atlantic 10 has played in a few of them. This is one of them. Short of having some Big East teams in here, this is a pretty good representative mid-major tourney.
Yeah, and I really hope I'm really excited to see whether it's Buffalo or Stephen F. Austin on Wednesday. That'd be an exciting game. And honestly, at this point, any game, especially for a team like that can give you a better idea of where to place SLU and kind of grade them on what are we seeing, where's the level of talent, what are they doing against the differing levels of talent, how can you kind of grade that and weight it. It only gets easier when you get somebody like a Buffalo or a Stephen F. Austin. So yeah, that'll be exciting, and we'll be talking about that obviously later in the week.
A final note on that is I hope it's Buffalo, not that I root for them or Stephen F. Austin, but two former Billiken assistant coaches are on the Buffalo staff. Jim Weitzel is the head coach, and he coached under Rick Majerus, and Angus Thorpe, who was a Billiken assistant coach a long time ago, and so two former Billiken assistants. And I'm sure I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they run a lot of Majerus stuff. So I'm kind of rooting for Buffalo. They're both terrific guys, and were great to be around when they were on staff. So I really wish them well, except if we play them.
Of course, yes. And if SLU does play them, I'll be waiting to see from you how many times during the game you had a flashback or just like, I've seen that exact play run 1,000 times.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, let's switch over to the NBA. Tell me what you observed over the weekend and what you're looking for this coming week.
I was very wrong on Friday when I said the good slate was on Monday. I misread the calendar. It was on Sunday. And luckily I was able to watch a big chunk of it. You had Paul George with a big game while Kristaps Porzingis finally showed up for the Mavs. That's huge. They have a rematch coming up later in the week, which I'll be interested to see, mainly just anytime Kristaps Porzingis can actually put a game together. If he can start putting multiple games together, that changes how you see Dallas. Although, personally, when it comes to the NBA, one thing people should know about me is I don't think Jason Kidd is a very good coach at all whatsoever. I just don't.
Don't sugarcoat it. Tell us what you think.
The guy's a great basketball player, incredible basketball player, development insane, finally learned how to shoot a jumper. Bad head coach. I wanted to get your thoughts. I don't know if you saw it. The Pistons and Lakers altercation. LeBron James catching a 1-game suspension for hitting Isaiah Stewart in the eye. Under the basket, Isaiah Stewart getting 2-game suspension, obviously, for his altercations afterwards, which I thought, honestly, I'm not saying it should have been more. I'm saying I'm surprised it wasn't more because I thought you'd get 1 game each time you physically pushed an official, and he pushed an official like 8 times. So that was – but, I mean, Isaiah Stewart was not messing around with LeBron.
Well, I think there are several things to look at there. You probably had better looks. I was already traveling and on the road, just looking on my iPad, and just that single clip and not a bunch of different angles. Without really getting a good angle and analyzing, it did seem like quite a cheap shot and a dirty play from LeBron. Stewart, I get being mad. I really do. And trying to get at him. But I think the extra part of the suspension was that he absolutely lost control and they couldn't calm him down.
Yeah.
And that's where I thought, like you, it could have been longer. Hey, this guy's got an issue here. This is bad. It's a horrible look for the league. If they'd have let him go, he was going to, and even if he doesn't get to LeBron, he was going to, I don't know what he would have done, but he might have killed some. I mean, I could be exaggerating, but there's no way to prove I'm wrong. But I mean, he was berserk. And,
are you kidding me, Bob? That's the natural reaction when I just want to talk to him. I just want to talk to him. Why don't you let me talk to him? That's all it was. No. He was, and I read a good piece today about how the Pistons front office obviously has had a conversation with him about it, and it's one of those things where they know how good he can be, and if you're Pistons aren't a very washable team, but Isaiah Stewart is a very solid player for them.
Yeah.
A very good big man, moves his feet really well, can play on the perimeter. Good defensive game. He's really good for the Pistons, but he has had 2 or 3 moments. I mean, he's a quiet guy, but 99% of the time. But the problem is he has those 1% moments where he gets ejected or gets a technical, and he's had 2 or 3 of them in the NBA. This one, obviously, much more publicized. It's LeBron. It's the Lakers. Most Pistons games, the other things we've seen from him haven't gotten the big call, but the Pistons know, and hopefully he knows that, fire and passion is good, but it comes at a place and a time, that needs to be respected, and you're not going to help your team by getting suspended for 2 games when you're a key part of a rebuilding effort.
If you were going to have a debate about it, and first of all, suspensions they were appropriate, but if you were going to have a debate about it, I think if he had a good lawyer, he could say that if Stewart doesn't go crazy, there might not even have been a flagrant 2 on LeBron, much less a suspension.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting way to look. I mean, he did draw blood. He did draw blood.
Well, but had he just and walked over to the bench, would they have gone and looked at it? Probably.
Yeah, it's probably a flip. Yeah, you're probably right.
Probably would have, but would he have gotten a game suspension? Probably not. So I'm not defending his actions, but I think it exposed LeBron a little bit. Now here's
he also got behind that wall of Lakers pretty quickly.
Well, nobody said he's stupid.
No, he's not. Needs to get a little deeper in the books, though.
That would be good.
Just some other quick points. The Bulls are still really fun to watch. They went to 12-5, beating the Knicks. The Bulls are incredibly fun to watch. Yeah. Alex Caruso flies around the court. Zach LaVine flies above the court. DeMar DeRozan is just methodical. Had 30 points on like 17 shots in the win over the Knicks. They're really good. The Suns won their 12th straight over the Nuggets. Nikola Jokic didn't play, but still the Suns are incredibly are on an absolute roll right now. And Devin Booker, if you want to watch good methodical basketball, Devin Booker is just he gets to his 17-foot, he gets to his 19-foot spots just above the elbow. He makes his shot from there. Every once in a while, he runs the offense. Usually, when he does run the offense, it's an assist from him. It's crazy. He only gets like 15 possessions per game, and he ends up with 7 assists. It's ridiculous the efficiency he has when he actually runs the offense. And then Chris Paul is just 9 assists per game, slow, methodical, 2 steals. It's the same thing we've seen from Chris Paul for the last 15 years. The Suns are incredibly fun to watch. And the Warriors, Clay, by the way, I said after New Year's, it looks like it's going to be before Christmas now. And that's ridiculous because on Sunday, when Sunday Curry was off, he went 6 of 15, I think. And Andrew Wiggins poured in 32. Jordan Poole poured in 33. And then Curry and Draymond combined for 16 assists, 8 each. It's just you're done. They're incredible. They're going to dominate all year, and I cannot wait to see what happens when Clay gets back around Christmas.
I agree. And we'd like to tell everybody, for those who are just getting into the 2-man game, that we want everybody to have a great Thanksgiving. And our intent is to be back on Friday.
Yes, sir.
And we'll be able to set up what the Billikens will be going. They'll be going to Boise at that time, hopefully after a Cancun Challenge championship. That would be great. And if that's the case, kind of riding high going to Boise, because that'll be a very difficult game. We'll talk about that on Friday, and we'll see what else has happened in the NBA and keep everybody abreast of that. So for my partner, Matt Rocchio, I'm Bob Ramsey. Again, what?
One more thing. One more thing. Because the games on the NBA games on today and Wednesday are not very good. So I watched 3 movies over the weekend.
Oh yes.
So the NBA games aren't great. There's a lot of SLU. So maybe post SLU, if you're looking to wind down after the SLU game on Tuesday or Wednesday, or maybe before if you got some time between work and watching the 2-man game and the SLU game. Here's what I watched: King Richard on HBO Max. Go watch it. Find somebody who has an account, steal it from them. Wait till
I can't
pester
wait.
them with your text until you have a password. It's incredible. It is
I can't
unbelievable. Will Smith's getting an Oscar nomination. He should win it. It's unbelievably good.
That's great
King
to
Richard
hear.
on HBO Max. See it now. It's the story of Richard Williams, the parent of Serena Venus, and obviously his three other daughters. An incredible movie.
Go ahead.
And then the other one I saw was that I thought you would want to see, because I also saw Eternals. It was okay. But the one I want to talk to you about really quick was Netflix's Harder They Fall, which is the cowboy movie starring, why am I blanking on the name right now? Jonathan Majors. Sorry, Jonathan Majors, as well as everyone. Lakeith Stanfield's in it, and Idris Elba. Pretty much every talented and African-American actor that you haven't even heard of is in this movie. They got everybody that you've ever seen. It's so freaking good. Delroy Lindo is in the freaking movie and has like a main part. It's incredible.
As anybody who knows me knows that I'm a huge fan of Westerns. I'm really looking forward to it. I really am.
Good. They got the gunfights. They got every aspect of it too. They got the one-liners that I know you love in your Westerns. And again, you have Idris Elba and Jonathan Majors each leading a gang, and then you have Delroy Lindo as the grizzled U.S. Marshal. It's perfect.
I love it. I love it. That is a good update. We may have to make that at least a once a week. Well, if we're going to go entertainment, then I want to give a tip of the cap to St. John Vianney players who did a production of The Odd Couple over the weekend. And I don't know if you saw the reviews, Bafo Sacco. Those were the reviews. And they're saying that newcomer Brendan Ramsey seems like an early Steve McQueen. I don't know if you've heard that.
Wow.
Early Steve McQueen vibe.
I totally believe that, because a lot of people make Steve McQueen references like around these days. Popular topical reference.
We've got to go, Matt. It's great, and I will. We'll visit with you on Friday, and hopefully, folks will be able to tune in and catch the Billiken games both on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we'll get back at it and talk about that on Friday. So, for my partner Matt Rocchio, I'm Bob Ramsey. This has been the Two-Man Game on Claibs Online. Buenos